I think that architects and planners are uniquely suited to solve these problems that are multifaceted. Yeah, architects they're generalists, and what that allows them to do is see the entire problem. And the thing about our cities today is they're remarkably complex. They're extraordinarily important because they're essential to healthy lives, to healthy lifestyles. But they're very complicated. They require a thinker who can synthesize a lot of different things. They're not about science. They're not about only social history. They're not about any one thing, but they're about these many things coming together. And I think that that's a special talent that architects and planners bring. The other thing that's really important is leadership. Actually, the Riverwalk happened during the big housing recession. And right then, the U.S. government was looking for shovel-ready projects, and our mayor at the time he showed the leadership, and he provided the leadership. I think projects like this happen when those forces come together. For this particular project, because it was originally conceived of as part of a road renovation, my client was the city of Chicago, but particularly it was the Department of Transportation. That contract only covered the first 3 blocks of the Riverwalk. One of the reasons was the source of funding changed, and therefore there was another contract. But we did have to compete for it twice, and the second time we invited Sasaki, their landscape architects, civil engineers, and architects, and we asked them to join our team as the prime consultant. So we worked with them for the final 2 phases. The mayor changed, the planning department changed, the commissioner changed like 4 or 5 times during this project. We were the constant. The project was 16 years from when we were commissioned for the first part of it to the final construction opening. And so we went through, I think, 4 commissioners. While the city leadership was constant, it wasn't like there was a visionary on the side of the city that was a counterpart to the design team. If there's any role that we played more than anything else, is my studio provided that consistency. Design is formed by basically answering demand and answering it in an innovative way. And you can look at it from the planet's perspective, and you can look at it from the human perspective. I'm not sure which one is more tragic at the moment, but I think that you have hit on exactly the right thing. This is an opportunity to build infrastructure that not only improves the health of people living in the city, but improves the health of the planet also.
The key principles for the Sydney Green Grid are really about increasing access to open space, encouraging sustainable transport connections, creating a high quality and active public realm, and most importantly, is conserving the natural environment, but also adapting to climate extremes. So these principles have now been embedded in many documents across metropolitan Sydney, because councils were required to develop their own green grid strategies, and many of the councils have done so. There's actually been approximately 70% uptake of the development of green grid strategies at a local level. There has been funding which has been allocated to these projects. So it's been taken from primarily an idea to action, to deliverables. There was an action in the Metropolitan Plan to progress the Sydney Green Grid. That really gave us an enormous amount of leverage to start working at a district level with a broad range of stakeholders through our collaboration with the Greater Cities Commission at the time. Governance is key. All your key agencies working together to deliver on an integrated strategy. Part of their frame of reference looks to deliver the Green Grid as part of an integrated spatial framework for the city. With the Olympics coming up, this is an ideal opportunity where there is so much infrastructure works going to be underway. If there were a set of principles that everybody could adhere to, you might have a great opportunity to deliver the network of open space as part of your Brisbane Green Grid strategy.
Most of the hottest places within our cities are actually our street and road corridors, and those are the jurisdiction of our government authorities. So that presents this great opportunity for change. Canopy shade is proven to reduce urban heat by 5%. The green grid, the idea of these sort of connecting shadeways, they're absolutely critical to doing that. We need to start thinking about green infrastructure as the critical infrastructure. We need to put that first and then work out how to support that. How do we build that? And how do we support it with other engineering solutions, but that it's the green infrastructure that has to be put forward first. The green elements need to be supported by the blue grid. So we're not just looking at green connectivity across the city, we're also looking at the river being the heart of the city. 9 years is not that long in terms of a project time frame, and particularly when you're dealing with living systems. So many of these projects need to already be in planning or have already been planned and really just need to be given the go-ahead to be implemented. So how do we connect our city better? Which bridges can we push the green light on? Which corridors connect to those bridges and will connect our really important destination places within the city so that we can move people from place to place, cycles, pedestrians. How do we do that in a shady way that's respectful of our climate and responds to our climate and leaves us a legacy into the future? To do that, we probably need some joined up thinking, integrated thinking across disciplines, and ideally we have a group that leads that and champions that.
Taking a precinct-based approach to venue design and planning is a really important way for us to leverage the opportunity of the Brisbane 2032 event for wider community benefit and long-term legacy. Successful precincts are multi-purpose, multifunctional spaces, well-connected and full of vitality. The key to achieving a successful precinct is to have a strong, long-term common goal and outcome, buy-in from key stakeholders to ensure challenges and conflicts can be managed, and consideration of the ever-changing needs of the end user. Brisbane has many fantastic examples of where taking a precinct-based approach has led to successful outcomes, and the Brisbane 2032 opportunity provides a chance to take a precinct-based approach anchored around our sporting infrastructure. This approach has been successfully implemented in many locations around Australia. One location where this approach has been successful is the continuing rejuvenation of the precinct around Adelaide Oval and the neighbouring Riverside Renewal area. As part of Adelaide Oval's major renovation, consideration was given to the need to ensure this precinct was activated outside of major events, resulting in the planned inclusion of a web of varied uses that can benefit from each other's successes and ensure that the area is a destination in its own right. The success of this wider precinct has been the ongoing common vision for the outcome, embedded placemaking and place design principles from the outset, and a clear governance strategy. For Brisbane 2032, we are taking the unique approach of utilising venues right across our city and region, which significantly increases our chances to unlock wider community benefits and plan for very long-term legacy outcomes in more locations.
It's really an all-encompassing experience design piece of work. You know, it is about the experience. And then legacy, you know, what is literally there for people to go to after we finish with it.
Even when we worked on the Olympics, we had just these fortnightly workshops with every designer, the brand guys, lighting designers, architects, landscape architects, us as sort of wayfinding. That was probably about it. And we would all just sit around the big table and absorb what was happening and talk and throw in some ideas. And I think it led to some definitely better design outcomes. So
the Gold Coast Com Games was very interesting because what it generated was all of the hub. So you know the multilingual pedestrian wayfinding system, right? That is a much lauded system because it's came out of economic development. Its history is really beautifully modest. It was the urban designer in council saying economic development have identified that we have all of the student accommodation and people are coming from abroad and they can't access the high street and the assets on the high street. So we need to get people circulating. And here are the main, groups that are coming: Arabic, Korean, so, 4 or 5 languages plus English as a dominant language. So it was a very small, modest rollout, a success. It gets rolled out. It's a couple of years prior to the Com Games. Com Games comes along. Oh, we'd better develop. It's usually very unusual to do directional signages first and then to do an identification sign. Oh, well, we can use these again. And Mark's got a very good point when he talks about safety. A city is benefiting from this system because it's placing information to keep people safe and keep them moving, to access their public transport. And so accessibility is enormous. And as you said, so we don't talk about accessibility as much as we talk about universal design principles and equity for everybody. I think it does require a certain level of cooperation, not just collaboration. And it really is about a understanding. It takes many people to get to here. Then you get the best possible outcomes with all the voices being listened to. It's for the greater good. And I mean, I know that sounds really altruistic, but I actually do believe that. And I think, there are probably a few players. So it's about the greater good.
You do need like a really strong public sector and like a development authority or development agency involved. London was quite lucky in that period in the the 2000s. It had the London Development Agency, which was actually starting to channel and coordinate on place-based funding. They were the ones who took the charge on land assembly, which was kind of one of the big public investments. The community infrastructure levy was literally a flat rate levy charged on development. So it's been rolled out across the country now, and actually we're going through another change, which is going to be a national infrastructure levy. But the point with the SIL was it kind of gave developers a flat rate on the amount of floor space they built in terms of contribution into infrastructure. Things called Section 106 agreements, which is where developers have to contribute to infrastructure funding. So that's happened. And more recently, and I think the kind of laws came in, whilst the plan was under inception, was the community infrastructure levy. So there was a mayoral SIL, which kind of put some money in from council into the park. It also funded things like the big Crossrail or the Elizabeth line, which opened recently. And so that there have been kind of various different funding pots that have come together. I think arguably, this was going on in a period of huge land value inflation, being driven by pretty low interest rates, which is now kind of certainly coming to an end around the world. So there was this kind of uplift that was going on, and I think there was a lot of benefit from the public investment that probably wasn't captured back, and that's always been the kind of controversial thing. So the London Legacy Development Authority, or the LLDC, which has focused on the long-term redevelopment, and the prior to that was the Olympic Development Authority. Arguably their boundary was drawn too tightly, so people outside of that have actually really capitalized on what's been probably billions of pounds of investment into this focused area in East London. I think another model which was used quite successfully and has only been used once in London was a tax increment finance model, which has been used for the Northern Line extension down in Battersea. And again, that was kind of more locally specific on the development around the new London Underground extension. And I think arguably that's probably been quite successful in kind of drawing down funding from private developers in the area. So that's probably a good model for infrastructure funding around an infrastructure element. Arguably, when you look at the quality of the environment that's been created there, the homes, significant jobs, and now kind of cultural institutions, some of which weren't planned originally but have come about because of the Olympics and the flexibility that was inherent. I think you could argue that actually the public investment has certainly kind of reaped benefits for all Londoners and visitors to the city. But I think ultimately it's about, you know, public leadership and vision. And if you can kind of have that, if you can have political consensus, that's probably going to be the big thing. That was one of the things I think that London had. But you know, when it comes to it, there was you know, cross-party support, and I think that's going to be really important in Brisbane.